On the podcast this week, should you include labour costs in your gross profit? And if so, why, how and when? Welcome to the Profit Cash Growth Podcast. This is the podcast for 6 and 7 figure business owners who are looking to grow a financially successful business. My co-host, Claire Hancock, is a finance director, chartered accountant and entrepreneur. And every week, I'll be exploring guidance and frameworks designed to help you increase your profits, improve your cash flow and grow your business.
You just made a confession to me, and I feel like you just confessed that you've got like a secret mobile phone or something.
I'm sorry, what do you mean?
You said you had a WhatsApp group. So we have a PCG podcast WhatsApp group.
Oh, okay.
And we put stuff in there like news stories and things that inspire us so that when we come and do the podcast planning, we kind of just go back through the WhatsApp group. But you just told me you have a secret WhatsApp group.
It's not a secret.
That I'm not in.
It's just the spread WhatsApp group that I used to have. It's just a different group where I put some stuff where I'm like, because if I put it in the Profit Cash Growth one and it's a question that I want a spontaneous answer from, you're going to know it and you're going to overthink it and you're going to prepare it and all the rest of it. You know how your brain works.
Yeah.
So
like
anyway,
the answers.
So the question I wanted to ask you this week, Claire, which somebody asked, I heard from somebody else recently, and I thought it was a really good question, which is, I posed to you, if you could jump in a time machine and go back to any time in history, would you use the time machine? Now, there's only one rule, and that's that it's a one-way trip and you need to live out the rest of your life there from that time point onwards. So given everything that's going on, at the moment, would you go back to a quote-unquote better time? And if so, what time would you go back to?
And how would my life be led? Would I just live a similar sort of lifestyle in terms of like social status and class and income and relative to the time? So I'm just
let's just
I think that I would probably. Yeah, it's a really interesting question.
I know, isn't it just?
I think I'd probably like to go back to the 90s.
Okay.
And stay there forever.
Okay.
I think we had just the right amount of technology, that life was easy, but it wasn't easy enough that we took things for granted.
Interesting.
No social media. Yeah, entertainment was abundant, but it wasn't. So there was only 5 TV channels, so we still had to talk to each other and you had to talk in the adverts.
It came up because it's interesting that you said that, because I think it'd probably be kind of my go-to place to do it.
But you love the 90s, hence why you still listen to like Oasis all the time.
But you know, the reality is that probably, I haven't got the stats in front of me, but I think this was the point in the story, is that on almost every metric, it would be, you would be worse off on almost every metric than we are today. And
financially?
Just everything, I think.
No, I disagree with it. I think there's so many measures to life beyond whether we're financially better off. And I think that...
No, I think medically and everything, things like that. Like if you got cancer in the 90s, you'd be medically more likely to die of it than you would today.
You were way less likely to get cancer, especially at our age.
I don't know about that.
Cancer rates in people that are our age are soaring at the moment. So, actually it swings around about it, but it's so much more about the quality of life and the relationships and the mental health issues and all of those things. Those statistics were just way better. So yes, financially you may have been a bit worse off, but actually you didn't know any better. So
it's interesting because I think the point was that when people, they spend their life saying, oh, it's horrific and, could we just go back to this time? But nobody ever really looks at the stats, and that on every metric, pretty much every metric, I'm pretty sure. And, there's contextual things that you probably can't account for in your head. Yeah. But like, whenever they look at this on almost every metric, you are swapping for a worse time and for worse opportunities and for worse outcomes. Almost on every metric, the world has moved forward. And like, it is an interesting question when people ask that question. It's like, actually, the bigger question is, would you do it at all? Would you jump in it at all? And
would you?
I wouldn't, no.
You'd stay here?
I think...
in the world where...
I would dread to think about what it would... I could not imagine trying to start a business without the tools I have today. 30 years ago. I just could not imagine the idea of like not being able to research anything, on like not being able to get my hands on anything, like having to do everything, like having to go to the library to get a book to work out, like having to communicate with people like through a phone call or a page. It'd just be mental.
I was probably borderline, would I stay today, until something happened in the news a couple of days ago with the AI bot, the AI hacker that escaped.
That released,
and hacked in to another AI company.
Yeah.
And that, I feel like that moment was swept under the radar a little bit. If you haven't read about it, go and read about it. It was an open AI,
like a virus. It escaped.
It was an open AI hacking bot that was designed to go and hack, and it was supposed to be in a sandbox, but it managed to escape, managed to break through all the boundaries that they put in place because it went and hacked into a different AI company that thought it hacked into this AI company because it did its research and thought that that would have the answer to the problem that it was trying to solve in the sandbox. Yeah. So that was the reason it went and hacked. But I feel like that is a pivotal moment in our world that will be talked about for decades, centuries to come, I think that's really, really important.
It's
scary.
Basically...
It's scary.
It's basically, have you ever heard of the paperclip theory in AI?
No.
So I'm just trying to get this so I don't butcher this. So it's basically this concept that imagine you built a super intelligent AI to give it a simple goal, make as many paperclips as possible. Seems like a totally harmless goal, but if the AI is powerful enough and pursues the goal single-mindedly, it could end up converting all available matter, including the Earth and eventually the rest of the universe, into paperclips or paperclip-making machinery. So it's this thing of like one-track mission you've given it, and this is the example of that, where they've said, this is your mission, and it's hacked its way out of its own sandbox to go and try and find something to make it better at hacking, and like it's just on this one uncontrollable mission. Yeah. So frightening stuff, really. The first example of something pretty frightening where OpenAI put their hand up, a bit like the Wuhan virus is how I described it, and they've gone, well, we didn't tell it to do that. And they're like holding up the hands as if they're not accountable. And it's like, you are very much accountable for this.
Yeah, look, I think the
crazy
only grace of God here is that it hacked into another AI company and they went and spoke to OpenAI and said, I think we've got a problem here.
Yeah.
But it could have hacked into a government agency. It could have done anything.
So
I think
we need a bit of this, though. It's been talked about for a while, theoretically. We need an actual breach for governments and people to just wake up and put things in place to say, we need to stop this, slow this down. It's ridiculous.
I was discussing this with the team and us the other evening. I was saying I think that we've massively underestimated just how intelligent humans are, and I don't think that AI will ever be as clever as humans. I think the risk is actually that AI thinks it's cleverer than it is, like you say, with this one-track mind effect, and I think that poses the biggest risk to us.
Could that just be a timing thing, that actually they've got this timing wrong between at the moment AI kind of thinks it's cleverer than it is because it's not at that point, but if you wind forward 5 or 10, those two things will join up and it will do its mission and its intelligence will catch up, because obviously it's still growing, isn't it, hugely. So maybe you're right, there's a mismatch at the moment where it knows to go for the mission.
I think
it's intelligent enough to know that, but it doesn't.
I think it will always have a problem because you can't fake conscience.
Well, yeah.
You look at how dangerous like narcissistic people are. Like genuine, not they're narcissistic. Like people that actually diagnose narcissistics, they do terrible, terrible things in the world because they don't have a feeling or sense of conscience. And you can fake it as much as possible. You can pretend, and you can have these rules that say I should feel like this, and I should be doing this, and I shouldn't be doing that. But at the end of the day, you cannot fake conscience, and you cannot fake feelings.
True. Okay, well, interesting. Let's see how it plays out. Let's hope that it doesn't destroy everything, like it nearly destroyed this podcast a minute ago, as you mentioned we've done this twice, haven't we?
We are just recording this bit again.
Because literally you mentioned AI and it literally it blew up everything on our computer. And
well, that's quite dramatic. It completely turned my microphone off. I said that AI was thick.
I don't know how.
And it was really stupid and humans were better. And then literally the next second my microphone turned off and it wouldn't turn back on.
For no apparent reason.
Yeah,
scary.
There we go.
Right, let's see what's in this week's news story of the week. So, this week's news story week is, are Britain's pubs really in crisis? But before I do that, because it's all connected, there's been obviously a plethora of Andy Burnham type news this week. So I just want to touch a couple that I thought were interesting points that have come up. First of all, there has been a Burnham bounce in consumer confidence. You know, we talk a lot about the GfK Consumer Confidence Index on this podcast quite often, and how it's been at an all-time low as World War II, basically, and this is really weighing on everything in the economy. Well, there's been a bounce of about 8 points in it, so it's actually gone from minus 39 to minus 28 since Andy Burnham's come in. What do you think about that?
I don't think it's the Burnham bounce. I think it's the Kia kick-out celebration.
Okay.
I don't think people give a hoot whether Andy Burnham is in or not. I think they just hated Keir massively, and I even think we would have celebrated Angela Rayner getting empowered, to be honest. So
interesting. So do you think that's going to drop quite quickly again?
Yeah, the honeymoon period will not last.
Okay, fair enough. It's interesting that you think it is connected to Andy Burnham, because the news story actually suggests that it might just be that it's been wrapped up in the euphoria of things like the World Cup and the fact that the Middle East conflict was said it was solved recently.
Well, but bombing's back on.
No,
again,
I know it is, but this is obviously a bit delayed when they would have done the survey, and he's just got a bit wrapped up in people's confidence coming back a little bit because of that. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. The other thing that was interesting, obviously, he's done a lot of giveaways in his first week. It's like, just to list a few, he's going to end homelessness. He's removed VAT from energy bills. He's capping bus fares. He's cutting rates for pubs and clubs, which we're going to talk about. But what I quite like is that the Times are now doing a kind of cumulative running total on the cost of all of his things that he's spending on, which currently equals 1.8 billion, which, as you say, is a rounding error. But it's in a budget that has pretty much no headroom. I think last time they looked, it had 10 billion of headroom, if anything, for any ups and downs. Then it is a sum of money, isn't it? That's got to come from somewhere. And there's been no conversation about where it's come from.
Well, I think we all know it's going to come from our wealth tax, don't we?
But I'm not convinced that they're going to do a wealth tax. And if they do, then they couldn't start collecting that for years, I would suggest, because they've got to value all the assets. So I don't know how that doesn't really pay for anything they're doing today. So I'm not convinced that's where it'll come from. I guess it'll just come from another tax quickly that brings in quite quickly. I don't know what it would be. But
look, we watched Kemi Badenoch last night, and we were saying a similar thing when we were watching Andy Burnham outside Number 10 on his first day, and he used his very first speech to the general public as Prime Minister to announce that he was focusing on homelessness and bus fares. And you just turned to me and you said, he sounds like a town councillor. And Kemi Badenoch said a similar thing about him. She did a speech yesterday and it was very good. And it was like, why is he not talking about AI? Why is he not talking about global conflict? Why is he not talking about the economy?
Are young people not in work?
Yeah, like he's talking about things that should be managed on a local level, and he's still acting like a mayor. Yeah. And I think that's the concern, isn't it? Is that
how quickly he pivots from that.
Yeah. Does he really have what it takes to run a country?
Time will tell.
Yeah.
So the story about are Britain's pubs really in a crisis? So obviously he's done something for pubs around the 20% discount on business rates. But actually, what is he trying to save here? Because when you actually go below the data, this is really interesting.
Just before we get into this pub thing, this really, really wound me up because they've cut business rates for some hospitality businesses, not all, so restaurants and things are not covered by it, but like pubs, nightclubs, and said that they get a 20% business rates cut, and that's been paid for by increasing business rates on what he described as non-desirable businesses such as vape shops. Yeah. And I turned to you and I said, he's literally like deciding for the country what is desirable and what isn't. Now, I do sit on the fence. I don't want to always play devil's advocate, but I do enjoy it somewhat, that not all vape shops are bad. Like, actually, there's very reputable vape shops out there that are not money laundering, are just generally good businesses that are saving lives and saving money for the NHS by helping people quit smoking.
Really interesting, because when you said to me about this, undesirable businesses or shops, I didn't read it that way. I thought you meant he was judging people for vaping. You're seeing it as no, he's judging the shops who might be money laundering. Is that what you're saying? So I've seen that from a totally different perspective. I thought he's been judge jury of, vaping's bad, so we should punish vaping.
He said undesirable businesses.
Oh, I misread that. So he is giving an underhand thing about saying, we think these businesses are just doing money laundering.
Well, I don't necessarily think that. I think he's saying that they do not add benefit to society. But who decides that?
Providing people who vape with their goods that they need,
their vape juice,
their products like anyone.
I don't like this whole individual deciding what is and isn't good and bad. I think consumers should do that with their feet and with their money.
Yeah, an open market situation.
Yeah. And it's just another Labour tactic.
Interesting. So back to the pubs stats. Are pubs really in trouble? And this was quite interesting because two graphs came up going back to 2010. So 14 years with the initial index set as 0. The total number of people that were, well, the total number of pubs has declined by 25% in those 14 years. The total number of people working in pubs has increased by 15%. What does that mean, Claire?
Well, what's the statistic around closing pubs? So it's like 7,500 pubs with less than 4 employees have shut.
Yes, so they then break this down. But
2,500 pubs with more than 20 employees have opened.
So the stats are bigger than that. So basically, they broke down the pubs that have shut in or gained into the number of employees. So basically, those pubs with less than 4 employees, 7,100 of them, we have 7,100 less since 14 years ago. But those with more than 20 employees, we have gained 2,910 of those size pubs. And we've also gained pubs in the range of 10 to 19 employees. So we've had a gain in pubs that have more than 10 employees, and we've had a decline in pubs that have less than 9 employees. But a net gain in the total number of people employed in the pub industry. So actually, arguably, the pub industry has grown.
Yeah, and I think that if we were to look at maybe other statistics such as pints pulled or drinks served, or even maybe like
take-ins,
turnover, bums in pubs, that type of thing, I think we would see a net increase. And this is really interesting, as obviously somebody who works with numbers. I think you can get swept up in a headline sometimes, and you've really got to understand what's going on in the background, because without a doubt, pubs are closing at a scary rate in the UK. But when you look at the numbers, it's only small local village pubs really that are closing. And we've seen lots of reasons behind that. There's this big shift demographically from people moving from rural locations into towns and cities. And also, I think there's a big shift in what consumers expect now. I think consumer standards have risen, and I think they're more likely to get that. The environment that they want to be in, what they expect in return for their money. I think that those standards have been raised significantly. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of smaller businesses, not just in the pub industry, I think in general, they struggle to compete with, the likes of Wetherspoons, for example. Their branding's on point, their service is on point, their product is on point. And it's very difficult to compete with that. It's not just about price point, it's about everything else that goes with it. And I think it's a real shame, but I don't think that there's anything that we can do about it.
Yeah.
I think that if a local pub is to survive, it needs to up its game.
Yeah, I mean, isn't, like we said this before, it's just like you can't fight the evolution of what the market wants. The open market is deciding, isn't it? And actually, I just thought about this, like the easiest way to say is the pub industry in decline is what's the total effective GDP of the pub industry over the last 14 years, and it's growing 11% a year, 11.3% a year.
The only caveat that I would say that local pubs need to up their game, etc., that the environment that they're working in is incredibly difficult to do that.
That's the argument, isn't it?
Actually, when you look at where the growth is coming from, they're generally from chains. They're not from these independent restaurants and pubs, and that is part of the issue as well, is that just the tax burden, the overhead burden, the employee costs, it's too much to survive, and small businesses can't weather that. Bigger businesses can, because they've got investment and they've got PE backing and things like that. So I definitely think there's an element of business owners in general, we all need to take responsibility for what's happening in our businesses. It's not enough just to open the doors every day and expect people to pick up the phone and come in and buy from us. But we do need a government that creates an environment where small businesses can thrive and become these big chains. Yeah,
I'm definitely on board with giving people that leg up as they go through the journey and taking it away when they get there. I mean, that makes sense, doesn't it? Talking about labour in pubs, let's move on to this week's deep dive, Claire, where we're going to ask the question as to whether you should indeed include your labour costs in your gross profit.
I see what you did there with the segue song.
It was good, wasn't it?
It was good. That was really good.
Even I was like, I didn't plan that. Go on then, Claire. So this week in numbers news, we're going to talk about that question that people often ask, which is when I'm breaking down my P&L, especially if I'm a service-based business, should I be including my labour costs in my gross profit or not?
Yes. Now, I would say this isn't just a service-based business, actually. Well, this is any business that has
especially
employees. Yes.
Yeah.
I see two things a lot when I'm looking at customers' P&Ls. And specifically, we're talking about their gross profit here. So firstly, I see seasonal businesses that have employees that go into their overhead costs. And then at busy times, normally around the summer, but at busy times, they take on a lot of subcontractors, and those subcontract costs go into their gross profit. So they put their subcontract costs as a cost of sale, and their gross profit declines. So it looks like they're doing loads of turnover, they're having great summertime, but their gross profits decline. And then they're like, oh, but our gross profit's really rubbish this month. It's like, but is your gross profit really that bad this month? Because you've had that cost already in your business throughout the quieter months as well. You've just put it in a different line in your P&L. You've still been paying salaries for people to do work.
Yeah.
So we see that scenario a lot. And then the other scenario we see is people putting salaried costs into gross margin. And therefore, it really skews the gross margin, because if you have a quiet month, then inevitably, if you have a quiet month from a sales perspective, inevitably your gross margin percentage will drop and look really bad. But it's not actually giving you any information about the underlying service, whether you delivered that service or that product in a more profitable way. It's just purely because you've got this fixed cost in there that your gross margin percentage will always fluctuate based on sales.
Quick question. Do you trust the numbers your accountant sends you? Or in fact, are they even sending you what you need at all? If your business turns over £1 million or more, you're already in the top 10% of UK companies. But here's the problem. Most accountants are built for the other 90%. They're built for compliance, not for businesses making big decisions on tight margins. So if you've stopped trusting your numbers enough to make confident decisions, head over to profitcashgrowth.com and book a discovery call. Let's get your business back in the room with people who actually understand it. And I guess the fixed cost has got no movement linked to the sales, so it really distorts the way of looking at those numbers.
Exactly. So classic one, like a logistics business, for example, driver salaries. A lot of people will put the driver's salary into gross profit. And so as soon as sales drop, you've still got to cover that driver's salary because it's sitting there in your gross profit line. So what that doesn't enable you to do is see whether your cost per mile of fuel was better, whether you loaded the trucks better and were able to do more trips during the day and therefore get more pricing out of the work. And did you backload? Did you go empty? All of those questions remain unanswered because your gross profit is completely skewed because you decided to put a fixed cost of salary in there.
Okay.
So that's what we're going to dig into today, is when you should put labour in gross profit, when you shouldn't put labour in gross profit, and how you do that.
Okay, cool. And also, starting with kind of why. So getting this right one way or another, or making the decision right, whether you do, why are we doing that? What is that gross profit number telling us? Why do we care?
The gross profit number is essentially telling us how efficiently we've delivered that service or product for a customer.
And why do I care about that more than looking at that on a net operating profit level?
A lot of small businesses do not have wildly out of control overheads.
Okay.
When you look at the cost base in a small business, a lot of it is actually entirely focused on service delivery for the customer. If you look at, what HR, what finance, what IT, what admin people you have, actually that generally makes up a small proportion of your cost base. Okay. So therefore, the quickest and easiest way to increase profit in a business is to focus on that gross profit line.
Right.
Because that's where the biggest opportunities lie.
So getting these numbers tight allows you to make better decisions around that?
Exactly, yeah. If you don't actually know what's happening with the gross profit and you just see this number that's wildly going up and down every month based on your sales, well, you might as well just track your sales, because then you know what's happening with your sales, not what's actually happening with your efficiency and how you're pricing and all of those types of things.
Great. Are we starting? When? How?
So I'm going to talk you through the 3-step approach that we always take.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. So whenever we have a business, so I'm going to rattle off some types of businesses that we do this for. Logistics businesses, classic HGV businesses where they've got drivers, trades businesses where they've got people on the tools. Even like service-based businesses like our business where you've got, accountants that may be on a salary, but we could probably figure out time spent per each client, that type of thing, like actual billable hours, then that's really easy to do. So wherever you can directly attribute somebody's time to client-facing work and non-client-facing work. Okay, so if they're in a team meeting, that's non-client facing. If they're in a training day, that's non-client facing. If they're doing something that they're getting paid for or you're getting paid for as a business, that's client facing. So step 1 is we always say, what staff can we do this for and what staff can't we do this for? Okay, if we can split their time out, then they go into this pool of what we would call a payroll adjustment. Okay.
And is it, so you're this is about not allocating their entire salary, but being able to allocate parts of their time, which I guess is quite challenging, right?
Yeah, but in a business, so like for example, in like PCG, it's easy to do that for an accountant to say what time did they spend in client-facing work versus where did they spend in a meeting. If we've got an admin person, chances are they never do client-facing work. I mean, they're excluded from this calculation that we're going to do.
But I mean, you say that like it's really, but practically, how? I disagree with that. How would you know your people unless they're clocking everything in a time?
You don't need to do that. So I'm not saying at this stage one, we're not saying do we clock their time. We're just saying could we? Could we attribute whether they're client-facing, non-client-facing? That's step one.
If you put tools in place to do that.
Exactly. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Then what we actually want to do is try and say, okay, in the most pragmatic way, how can we do this without adding a load of time into the business? Okay. So for example, my team, we might say, okay, we're just going to track like an average day or an average week. How much time do you spend in team meetings, doing emails, all of that kind of fluff versus client-facing work? So we would take that and then we would extrapolate it out. HGV drivers, anything like that, where there's a tacho, that's dead easy because you've got a tacho graph. You can easily see how many days somebody's been working on the tools and when they haven't.
Yeah.
Similar thing if you're like a trades business and you've got some sort of management system that tells you where people are going and when they're working on jobs and when they're not. We just need to get 75-80% of the way there with this information.
Okay.
So HGV businesses, this is a really good example. We take their tacho data. Now, some jobs might take 4 hours, some might take 10 hours. We're not going to go to that granular level of detail. We're just going to say, did they work that day or not? Yes. Because on average, some days they work 4, sometimes they work 10. It probably works out on average a working day.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're going to take a really pragmatic approach to it and say, how can we get 75-80% of the way there with our data? Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm going to stick with this HGV business just because I was literally doing this the other day and it's really easy for me to talk about. So we take their tacho data. We say, did the driver work or not? Yes. What's their salary? And therefore, what's their average daily rate?
Okay. Yeah. And we
multiply the two and then we put that into cost of sales.
Okay.
Only the worked client-facing time goes into cost of sales.
Okay.
Now, interestingly, what this really enables you to do is then see your downtime.
Because you've got this lump of like money and time where somebody's sat in the overheads portion that's maybe outside of central office. So you'd still have to split them out in the overheads so you could see the downtime of like what should be productive work. Let's call it productive work. I'm not saying office people are not productive, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So therefore
billable work. Or we call it utilisation.
Like, we've got this, and it also helps you then understand that you've got this like ability to grow into as well.
100%.
Loads of good stats that come out of it.
So all of a sudden, from tweaking our gross margin, we've now got actual gross margin information available. We know actually how much it costs us to deliver that work for that client. So we therefore know what true gross margin we've made. We know what our utilisation of people is.
And I guess you could probably even go granular down to, we know on a Wednesday that we've got 80% more capacity, so we could take on jobs just on a Wednesday, but we couldn't take them on a Monday. And all of a sudden you've got data that's really, really useful for you.
Yeah. And you start to see all these weird and wonderful little things because essentially what you're saying is your operational team, your client-facing team that deliver the work that clients actually pay for, you start to see utilised versus non-utilised cost. And when you see those numbers, they are not, the gap between them is often smaller than you would like. Often people think, they 100% work on client-facing work all the time, and they don't. They have holiday, they have sick days, they have a Christmas party, they have training days, you have team meetings. And actually, I think a lot of people would end up with about 25-30% of their total costs sitting in that underutilised time. And that is profit. It's like you talked about how can you utilise those people from a capacity perspective instead of taking on more staff. How can we improve capacity?
Now, it's really interesting that you're talking about this as a quote-unquote accountant, FD, various other things, because this feels like this is well out the realm of an accountant. This feels like what I would call traditionally business intelligence.
Yeah, it's operational.
Or whatever else. Why do you get involved in this?
Because
this is in your remit for these people.
Most accountants, the most common accountancy qualification in the UK is ACCA or ACA, and both of those are tax-facing, year-end facing, compliance-facing, whereas my qualification, CIMA, is business performance and growth facing. So this is exactly the type of things that we look at. That's essentially what a management accountant does. If you start as a management accountant, you generally end up as an FD, that's the pathway. So we're much more operational, inserted into the business. And, at the end of the day, nobody in finance increases profit. Like the finance person is supposed to identify an opportunity that somebody in the business can implement. So that cost saving never comes from something that finance does. It comes from something that somebody in the business, operational, sales, purchasing, customer services, all of those departments need to implement and make the change. We just need to tell people what the issue is and help figure out the solution.
Yeah. Brilliant.
So, questions, Simon?
I think I've asked all the questions that I want to ask really within that. Summary
is that you should be putting your labour costs into gross profit, but never put salary in there. You need to be figuring out what the actual billable time is. If you can't do that, don't put it in.
Yeah. So don't have too much of a guess. You can get it close, but you don't. If it's too far out, it's going to be misleading rather than helpful. Yeah,
absolutely. And you don't need to be tracking every minute, every hour, anything like that. You just need to, at a point in time, make a best guess estimate. So like the example I gave with my team, we might just decide like for 2 or 3 days, we're going to track time. So it's just this one-off isolated incident, and we're going to maybe use that for a quarter.
Yeah.
And then we're going to revisit it at the next quarter, because that will give you a glimpse into something.
Yeah.
And you'll often be able to, you're laughing at me because I use the right word there.
Yeah. And is there any occasions or business types where they could do all this, but they shouldn't?
Why would anybody not want to do this? Why would anybody not want to know the utilisation of their team and therefore the capacity, therefore the possibility?
So this is something that's open to everybody. There's no excuse. Your business isn't different or unusual. If you can do it, you should do it, and you will get the benefit from it.
Yeah, look, what I am going to say is that the businesses that do have a way of tracking this on the most granular level, so tachograph data, time tracking, so, lawyers, for example, where they bill per the hour, all of that type of thing, this actually becomes amazing, because then you can start to compare employees as well.
Yeah.
You can start to see who's actually delivering the output, productivity of individual people. So you will
powerful.
only get powerful information and valuable information from doing this. You will never be in a worse situation than you are today.
Great.
So if you're putting salaries in your gross profit, stop doing it.
Yeah.
Follow this process instead.
Yep. So to answer the question, should you include labour costs in your gross profit? The answer is yes, as long as you can do it accurately.
Yes.
Brilliant. Right, let's move on to this week's Profit Cash Growth Extra. So this week, Claire, I picked an app that's quite new that's come out. We're not using it. I just thought it was, really clever. And you probably know that I don't really struggle to put myself on camera and quickly come up with stuff, because week after week, and I have done for 10 years, I rack up at a place, I do what's called a one-take wonder, I record some stuff, and away I go. So I'm very reasonably good at doing that. But for most people, getting started is the challenging part. And there's a piece of software that's just come out called Vidinary. It's like a blend between video and visionary. Vidinary, and basically it allows you to do lots of short videos talking to a camera, but reading a transcript that is coming up on your phone. That effectively what it does is it comes up with you feed it, and AI comes up with the transcript for you to read. So it kind of gets you over the hurdle of like the creative and the idea. So you just feed it like, I want to be talking about X, Y, and Z. It gives you the transcript for a short video. You just crack on, you film yourself, you read, you basically look at the screen and read it. And the clever bit is Vidinary corrects where your eyes are looking, because obviously when you're looking at the screen, it doesn't look like you're looking at the camera. So it's always been the most challenging thing, if you ever try and film off a script, as you know, Claire, that it just looks like you're not looking at the person. That can be very disengaging. So the clever bit of this software is it actually corrects your eyes and gets you looking at it. I think it's just a nice, clever bit of software, gets you going. So if you're struggling to make that first step in doing video content, which, everybody's doing, it is still the future, isn't it? Video content, you should be doing it. Then Vidinary might just be a way to move forward with that. No affiliation whatsoever.
And who's behind it, Simon?
It's another Daniel Priestley product.
Yeah.
He's just rolling them out like there's no tomorrow. Anyway, thanks for joining for another week's podcast. As always, if you feel like you might have outgrown your accountant or feel like you don't quite trust your numbers anymore, please do get in touch with Claire and the team at Profit Cash Growth, profitcashgrowth.com. On there, you can book a discovery call. You can also take our new finance fitness scorecard on the website now, where you can find out maybe you're not sure what you need next from your finances. And the scorecard basically asks you you 13 very simple questions, and we'll tell you exactly where you're currently at as a business and what you might need to do next. There's also a do-it-yourself download on there where you can download an action plan if you want to do it yourself. But of course, if you want to ask any advice from the team, they're there. As always, please rate, review and subscribe to the podcast wherever you are, and we will see you again next week.